So we're live, and I'll just hit the Twitter button. Tell people we're live now.
So we've got. How would you refer to yourself as, there?
RJ.
I mean, as far as publisher, a critic, a writer. I mean.
Oh gosh, I'm all of that now because we've done the publishing of the first book, the Gods and Services book, and of course I'm still writing for Critical Blast. And hey, here come people. We got 3 viewers on already, unless that's us. That could be just us.
So yeah, and then of course I'm obviously do a bunch of different things too, and then alternative comics, which obviously are probably witness protection comics since the identity's being withheld. I'm joking around about the logo showing instead of a picture there.
Yeah, I'm doing all kinds of things in the workroom today, so it's very messy in here. Usually I'm on screen though. I've got a show on the Alterna channel there on YouTube.
Well, you're kind of a one-man show.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Other than the creators that we have here, I'm pretty much doing everything. So
yeah, I've done some independent publishing too, so I know exactly what you're up against.
Yeah, we've been doing it for about 13 years. So
I've actually been doing it longer. I did my first independent publication way back in 1977. It wasn't a comic book; it was a magazine where I did all the stories, art, everything. That was the Multiversal Scribe back in '77. There, if you look on eBay, you can't find a copy lower than $50. I guess people really like it.
Wow, that's awesome! Really, really great. Putting all kinds of things in the workbook today, so it's very messy.
So you think it's just us 3
Okay,
right
so
now?
we're starting to get some people coming in.
Oh, good.
No, I'm seeing Bean from PA. I assume PA is Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
There's my buddy Unholy Sporkable, who gets me all the naughty stickers from California. So, thank you for that. We'll give it just a little bit more time here. We'll see who else shows up. My coming through worry was that I'd have like low Wi-Fi and that I'd start kind of cutting out or anything.
Yeah, I think we should just get going. I think as we talk, people will come in and they'll spread the word about it.
All right. Well, let's introduce our players here today. On the one channel, we have Michael Tierney, who is the author of Tarzan and the Mysterious She. He is also the editor and author and compiler for the Edgar Rice Burroughs 100-Year Art Chronology. He's a regular contributor to the Overstreet Price Guide for Comic Books, as well as the owner of Collector's Edition in Little Rock, Arkansas, and the comic book store in North Little Rock, Arkansas. So he is front lines of the LCS.
Yeah. Are you there? It looks like you just froze up.
Yeah, I started hearing old stuff, so I'm going to close it out. Close out that window I was hearing it in. On the other screen, we have Peter Simeti, who is the producer of film The Chair, creator of comics in his own right, and publisher at Alterna Comics, captain of Teen Comics, and all-around nice guy. Basically, we got 2 of the nicest and most informed guys in the industry here. One is a retailer, one is a publisher, and today we're going to get some frank assessments of the comic book business, where it's at, and maybe brainstorm some ideas to make it a little bit better.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me on today. Yep.
Nice to be here. Glad to be here.
I'm going to have the other window open now where the comments were. I'm sorry about that, but every time I did that, I would freeze up, and then I would hear 5 minutes ago. So I've shut that off.
Yeah, if you mute the video on YouTube, you should be able to not hear any kind of echo or any kind of feedback.
Yeah, I'm just putting it up on my phone. This is a new thing for me. Michael and I did some tests the other day to make sure we could pull this off. But we've never gone live with more than one person. It's always been just me going live. So this is a new thing for us. So anyway, where we want to start at here is obviously we've all seen the numbers from Diamond that came out in the past week here. that comic sales are down for 2018. While the unit prices are up, the overall dollar prices are slightly up. And just to run over those numbers that we've all seen before, for those who are watching and haven't seen it, overall comics and graphic novels are down 1.8% compared to 2017. The units are down 5.98%, which is, kind of a big deal. The dollars increased 2%, but the units decreased 5.67%. So, as everyone said, less is sold for more.
Right.
Graphic novels are down 8.2% in dollars and down 9.71% in units. Michael, I have to assume, with you being on the front lines there in the LCS, that these sales numbers are actually even worse than Diamond reports, since they can only report what gets sold to you. So for these numbers to be at their best, you have to have 100% sell-through. Right.
Yeah, they're assuming that we sell every single copy, which does not happen. I will say one thing too is a lot of their numbers are skewed compared to my actual sales, because I've seen things where they'll be listing a book in the top 10. I'm like, I hardly sold maybe a couple of copies of that. So obviously you've got to know your own local market, and so no retailer can actually order by what the lists say sells, because you got to know what sells in my North Little Rock store does not sell in my Little Rock store. And I mean, they're separated by a river and 15 miles of interstate. So that's where you've got to have a local buyer who knows exactly what's selling. And, what I hate is like because they're looking at what was shipped. And if you go back to, I think when the X-Men #1, the Jim Lee issue with like the 5 covers that was made into one big quadro wraparound cover later for yet another cover. They think that's the best-selling comic of all time. For retailers, it was the absolute worst disaster we've ever had. I've got boxes of those things sitting around all over the place. So they're convinced that, hey, September's the month to put out the big stuff. And so you have a lot of disasters in September, because that's one of the worst months to sell new comics, because everybody's kids are going back to school. They're going back to school. Everybody's broke. They're spending their money on other things. And that's when the publishers think, oh, because X-Men sold so many comics to retailers, that's the month to launch all the stuff and do the big events. I will say, though, there is, of course, like every example you have, there's also going to be an example to the contrary. And an example to the contrary was when they did relaunch the New 52. That actually sold pretty well that month. Of course, I ordered really tight on it, and so I had fairly close to sellouts on those.
All right. And Michael, while you've seen the numbers drop in the stores, and we've seen Diamond say that the numbers are dropping overall, Peter, on your end, specifically for your titles, you've seen quite the opposite. You kind of got an uptick going this year.
Yeah, we have an uptick going mostly, though, through direct sales. Now, we also sell not just direct to readers and customers, but we sell direct to stores, too. So what I've been noticing in the past 5 to 6 months is that our direct sales have been sometimes almost double in the amount of dollars sold direct as opposed to through distribution. Our distribution numbers have gone down roughly across the board, the same way that everyone else's numbers have kind of gone down through distribution. And there's a whole lot of reasons for it, but our direct has been absolutely through the roof. It's been a 1,700% increase over last year. And last year was our best year ever before this year. And we had a 700% increase last year. It was mostly on the back of these $1.50 newsprint comics.
Now, is the newsprint a new thing for Alterna? Because you've been around for 12 years, and honest to gosh, it's only been like the last 8 months that I've been hearing Alterna. Yeah,
it is a new thing for us. It's about 2 years old. We introduced it in last May of 2017. And before that, we predominantly just put out graphic novels. We did a big push away from graphic novels. We still do them, and we still put them out, but we started to push more towards single issues just because the market shifting. I found 3 years ago, the graphic novel space was starting to get flooded. And I think we're starting to really see that right now too, especially. And more publishers they're running towards graphic novels, but because of that, they're flooding that market, and it's becoming completely confusing for book buyers who are very, very new to graphic novel purchasing, and they don't know what the heck to get. So we just decided, you know what, everyone's zigging, we're going to zag, and we're going to put out affordably priced single issues. The newsprint allows us to do that, and it's been working out wonderful for us.
Yeah, let me make a couple of points on that too. It's like you were talking about earlier how the reports are saying that sales are down. Actually, my store sales are up, but I'm ordering what actually sells, and so I'm not ordering anything close to what the sales charts show. And I've seen an increase over this year. When they fired Axel Alonso at Marvel, that was a good move for Marvel because at that point DC had passed them. Now they Marvel caught back up past DC again, but now DC's coming on once again, and so Marvel just. Their relaunch, because they went away from their core characters for so long, they've got to win them back. They got to bring it back to readers because you can't just say Wolverine's back. Come on, all you Wolverine readers, here we are again. When you've told them for several years, go buy something else because we're not going to give you what you want. And so, and another thing too, you were talking about the graphic novels, is that's one of the most damaging thing to the comic book industry has been the single month comics being all shifted towards, okay, we're going to do a story arc. So these 5 issues give you a whole story. So you got the one that has the beginning, another one has the middle, another one has the end. So it's almost impossible for new readers to find their way in on the racks because they're jumping in the middle of the story 9 times out of 10. And so I think it's a great idea to go back to single stories, and you can do single stories and have them put together to make a larger story, which is what I did with my Wall of Stars. Each story was a standalone story, but you put them all together in a graphic novel, and you got an even bigger story.
I did a study on this last year, and it was the craziest thing I've ever done, and I'll never do it again. But I went into my comic book collection and I dug out 12-issue runs of Justice League of America just to have a consistent basis to work from. And I got 12 issues consecutively from the 70s, from the 80s, the 90s, 2000s, and on. And I went through and I counted every single story, whether it was 3 issues for the story or 1 issue for the story. And in fact, I pulled some from the 60s. I've got a pretty good collection. And then I counted pages. Then I counted panels.
That's a big difference.
Counted words. I got down to the word count. And basically, since the 90s forward, we've gotten less story, less pictures, and fewer words for the dollar, adjusted for inflation, than we were getting in the 70s and 80s. You would get a comic book in the 80s as part of a regular 12-issue run. It might be an 80-page giant for no particular reason, or it'd be just the standard page count, and you would get maybe not a complete story, but you might even get 2 complete stories in that thing. And now they've lost the art of the decompressed storytelling.
Yeah, that's a big problem. And, it just used to, like in a 4-page story that you would get as a backup feature, you get more of a story than you sometimes will get nowadays out of a 4-part miniseries. One of the things too, there's also been a change in style in the making of comics. And I'm sure Peter can, back that up when I'm talking about it, because now it's considered text blocks are out. You don't show text blocks anymore, and thought balloons seem to be gone. If you are going to show a thought, it's going to be in where the text block was, and so they've kind of removed a lot of the writing. And artists, it takes just about as long to draw a smaller inset picture as it does to draw a splash page. Well, an artist would probably rather draw a 22-page book with 22 pictures than he would with 22 pages with 8 pictures on the page. So there's also the investment of time that it takes to make a book like that too. And so part of it's kind of laziness, part of it's a shifting of style, and not all of it for the better. I mean, people really, and the whole thing is like, again, I've made my own comics too, so this is me talking as a creator now, and this was something that was taught by Will Eisner, is that you use the panel size to control the speed of the story. You want to slow the story down, all of a sudden make it like time's passing real slowly, you go to tinier panels. You want to speed up the pacing of the story, then you go to the larger panels. That's almost been completely gotten lost. I mean, now it's just the pretty pictures.
I agree. Now, Peter, how do you handle something like that at Alterna when it comes to the storytelling as far as extended tales and chapters in books? I mean, do you try to focus on like a mini-series for something like that? Or do you have ongoing titles that you try to get story per issue? Or do you just leave that up to the creators?
Well, we're creator-owned, and it's a different situation. Most of our stories are mini-series, they're limited series. And we'll say that right up top, as opposed to a lot of these ongoings, you find that it's actually a mini-series, but they don't bill it as such. So no one ever understands, stick through the whole arc, the whole story will be there. If you're going to tell an ongoing series, you have to make sure every single issue is a one and done, complete entertainment piece, because that is what someone is purchasing. Now, you can have an overarching subplot, and you can do things like that. But but we don't really see much of that occur anymore. If you're going to do a miniseries, you can have something that has more of that feel of a first act, a second act, a third act, that kind of a thing. Sure. And let readers know, of course, that it's a miniseries. Otherwise, they're not going to be aware that they should either hunt down the issues they might have missed or look forward to the issues that are coming out. As far as creative, editorial, all that kind of stuff goes, since we are creator owned, it is up to the creators to have that vision and that drive and that editorial process. I do overlook a lot of the different elements and things like that. If something is completely jarringly off, I'll let them know, see if they can get back in there and edit or revise. But other than that, I'm not over here trying to control the story they're creating, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are paying their team and everything else. It's my responsibility to get their book out there and make sure people are aware of it and reading it and things like that. It becomes harder to do, though, in a market that we're mostly just seeing a lot of gimmicks and a lot of flooding of the market to essentially push out the space of a competitor that would grow in popularity and rise up. So it's always funny to me when I see people from the big two talking about giving chances to indie creators and making sure that their work gets out there and they get a following and all this other stuff. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's wonderful and everything, but your companies are directly responsible for why a lot of these people can't seem to gain any kind of an audience or get any kind of traction going for their work, because you're flooding the market. So it's very difficult to get those books into the hands of readers without kind of circumventing the traditional process. And that's why I think we are having success with direct sales as opposed to the same old through distribution.
Now, Peter, you're talking about how people buy directly from you rather than going through the Diamond route. You had mentioned or alluded to in some tweets a little bit further back about an alternative to using Diamond. Was that this direct method for the consumer, or did you have something in mind for the LCS industry where they might be able to bypass and circumvent this Diamond monopoly that, well, it's not a monopoly, but if you own a comic book shop, you're going to order through Diamond. You're not going to go through somebody else.
Yeah, well, we sell direct to LCS as well on alternaaccess.com. And we give a better discount than what you're going to get through from Diamond. And we offer different things like free shipping if you buy $25 or more of product. And we can sell internationally as well, but shipping kind of completely obliterates the savings there. So I mostly try to just push this for US shops. And we deal with about maybe 50 stores on the regular. But in terms of a wider distribution system for indies, I think the market would be healthier if Diamond was more of a premier distribution center with just the exclusive contracts they're going to have, or even if they just got very picky and they decided you have to be at this top 10, top 20 level of a publisher in order to be at Diamond. Otherwise, they're not going to distribute your product. And then that would open up the pathway for another distributor, an indie distributor, open up and enter the market and have a fighting chance. The way it is right now, Diamond is taking on way too much in an effort to kind of control, if not all of the market share, as much of the market share as they can. And it's showing because they are kind of understaffed and overworked at this point. Every single time that I've had interactions with people at Diamond, it's they're not really going to give you the best customer service in a lot of situations because they don't have the time for it. So that's not helping the entire situation here, because the way Diamond is being treated, Diamond's almost like a silent headquarters for all of comics. And they're not being utilized effectively just as a distributor, because they should be looking first and foremost towards getting comics into as many places as possible, not just the LCS. If comics are in more places, you're not going to get every comic in every place. But let's say if the top 10 comics were everywhere, you would then have people discovering comic books that didn't know about them before. They would then look at that and go, wow, I want to see more of these. I want to find a place where there's more comics. And they'll eventually find the LCS. And that's pretty much how all of us grew up finding comic shops.
You get your gateway comics out there.
Exactly.
Now, Michael, you talked about. Go ahead.
I was going to say, actually, we did. The system was set up like that at one point. Now I've been doing this 37 years, and I was a customer of Pacific Comics. Went over to Capital City before Pacific Comics collapsed, and then went over to Diamond right before Capital City collapsed. And what happened was, when Marvel said we want to have our own distribution center, they took a Heroes World, which is a regional distribution system, and tried to take them global. Well, that had disaster written all over it. It was a disaster. They just bled red ink. Well, before they closed down Heroes World, DC said, well, shoot, if Marvel's got their own distribution system, we want to have ours too. And so it got down to a bidding war between Diamond and Capital, because they knew whoever lost that war was probably not going to be around, and it was prophetic. And so Steve Jeppy just literally had to give away the store. And way back in the 90s, there were stories floating around about an email that Paul Levitt sent out talking about how, DC has an option to buy Diamond, and that, the way they can put the screws to the retailers if they wanted to. And then once that story got leaked, they were really retracting that a lot. Unfortunately, Diamond has never been sold to DC. I don't think DC wants to buy them, because basically they're getting their comics shipped for free, because I'm sure Jeppy's like, well, look, I just got to have the bread and butter to keep the operation going, and I'll make my money off the other stuff. Well, then Marvel collapsed, and they end up going back at DC. And so, the publishers, Marvel and DC, they've got, for me as a retailer and me as an independent publisher, it was great when you had 7-8 distributors, because I said, hey, I've got this new book coming out. We had 7-8 distributors who all wanted to carry it because they didn't want to be the one who didn't have the latest work. Now you got Marvel and DC just flooding the shelves with product, because they don't want all these guys coming in, new publishers like Alterna and like that, competing with them on the shelf. They are putting a lid on the marketplace and hammering the nails down. And poor Diamonds, like you're talking about, they are understaffed. I've toured their warehouse over in Olive Branch, and it is a monster place, but it's understaffed, and I don't think I'm not going to say anything about the employees. We'll just leave that there. But there's a lot of shipping problems coming out of there, and as a retailer, it's 10-20% damages and shortages every single week, which is devastating when you're trying to make a living off of weekly books. So here you have, it's difficult for independents to get sold through Diamond now, because, the Diamond employees are like, hey, we make 90% of our money off 10% of the work with DC and Marvel, and the other 90% of our work is for 10% of the sales with the independents. And I've had customers who had, comic books that were profitable for them, but Diamond was like, it's not profitable enough for us to handle your book anymore. We're cutting you off, and so the marketplace has gone away, and you can't grow a crop if you can't get it to the marketplace. But kind of, that's kind of give you a more of an overview. But to get back to what my original point was, is that when before Hero Worlds collapsed, and it was getting down to be a battle between Diamond and Capital City, and then Hero World collapsed. Well, then it was just Capital City versus the guys who had all the Marvel and the DCs, and they tried to we're the independent guys. We'll carry all the independent publishers, and they didn't even make it a year. I mean, so, there has been a distributor who tried to do it that way, and others have tried to open up since then. And unfortunately, if you don't have Marvel and DC, there's just not enough of the independent market to make it a nationwide distribution system viable. At least, so far it hasn't worked out that way.
Now, Michael, you're talking about them crowding out the shelves, Marvel and DC, that is, just throwing stuff out there. Obviously, DC, we just talked about earlier, has cut back on their titles. They're going back to another 52 titles. Apparently, that's their magic number for whatever reason. I guess 52 weeks in a year, 52 universes. I don't know. But Marvel's expanding. But ultimately, isn't it at the retailer end to decide, what the planogram is going to look like, what the shelves are going to be filled with, and how do you make those decisions? I guess you were talking about you try to get what sells, and you don't order what doesn't sell. What does sell right now?
Well, the way we've got things arranged, we're just going with a strict alphabet on my new comic shelving. I built some custom wood shelves. I don't know if you can see them in the background or not, but I've got 4 rows with all slanted, so a person can walk by, see full facing. No matter where they're standing, they'll still see they're angled, so they'll see that bottom shelf just as well as the top shelf. Now, the way we do it is alphabetical. Start with A's. We have Marvels on the top row, DC's on the second row, everybody else on the third and fourth, because the Marvel sell the best, DC sells the second best. So, in a way, it's kind of arranged by volume. And a person can just walk down the shelves. But now people also want to know what's new this week. And so we'll put cards behind each weekly releases and this is new this week. So they can say, okay, this is what has come out this week. Because I didn't want to have a new releases only section, because then people would just go to that, wouldn't look anywhere else. And, while they're having to walk past the other books, like, oh, hey, I missed that last week. Or there's a light week. Well, hey, now I'm take time to look at this. So for me, it's been better sales than having just a new comics release only section.
Sure, but what about titles? How do you pick which titles you're going to bring in?
Okay, well, it's all demand. It's all supply and demand. It's kind of funny because right now I've learned to. Used to I'd read the previews in advance. I do a lot of study on it, this and that, and I did some of my worst ordering that way. Now I read it at the very last second, and I'm looking at, hey, wow, that looks like that's going to be a great book. Wait a minute, not a single customer has requested this title. Well, maybe it's not so great. Or I might look at something and say, well, this looks awful to me, but wow, I got 10 people who want it. Well, I better rethink of this. So it's my customer feedback. We have reserve services for our customers, and that has a lot to do with it. I'd say that's probably 90% of my decision making. I go with a multiple of customer feedback, and a multiple of 0 is very often a 0. I mean, every now and then I'll gamble on stuff, but with so many titles to choose from, I'm really leaning heavily on what my customers are telling me they like.
Okay. You wrote an article in the annual Overstreet Guide, the great big thick one, where everybody goes to find out how much their comic books are worth. And you talked about the one of the reasons why books weren't selling was the Marvel initiative for sort of their forced diversity or their social justice initiative. And Peter, you kind of got caught up in that too, on the sidelines here. As much of a success as you are with Alterna, I've got to tell you, you are probably the biggest failure at being a white supremacist I've ever seen. And simply because of the philosophical argument that seems to be happening in the consumer base, where there's obviously dividing lines between the consumers, and there's a dividing line between the consumers and the publishers as well. I've never seen so many creators be actively antagonistic to their readers as I have these past 2 years. Can you speak to a little bit about that, Michael, first, about what your opinions were on why books weren't selling, and what, not really why they weren't selling, I guess, but what the impact was at your store because of these initiatives from Marvel?
Well, the initiative should be good story, good art, give the customer what they want. What Marvel changed it around was okay, we're going to push what we think you should be reading, and it doesn't work that way. You can't take Wolverine and make him into a little girl and expect the same people to keep buying that book. That little girl appealed to another set of readers, and all the Wolverine readers went away. That's why it's still struggling to bring people back for the Return of Wolverine and whatever iteration that follows that. Because I couldn't tell you how many times I had customers walk in my store and say, oh, hey, I want to get this from this character from the latest movie. What do you mean Thor's a girl? Okay, well, give me Wolverine. What do you mean he's a little girl? Okay, well, give me Iron Man. What do you mean he's a little girl? Well, give me Hulk. What do you mean he's a girl or an Asian dude? It just went on and on. Hawkeye's a girl. I mean, it just didn't end. And I had so many times I'd have new customers come in. I'm ready to start buying comics because I like what I saw in the movies, and they could not buy it. It's just it's one of the worst business plans I ever saw. I mean, it's fine to push diversity. I mean, because we have a diverse customer base. I want product for those customers. I want to sell them what they want, but you can't take an established character who, you can't take gold and start handing me a bar of silver and tell me, oh, that's as good as gold. No, it's not. You can't change the product and call it something else. I mean, it just it's one of the worst marketing plans I ever saw. I mean, it was a nice idea as far on the basis of it. Let's just make comics more diverse for a wider readership. I'm all down with that, but you can't just take away, because what is wrong with them is they know that if they come up with the new characters, those new characters aren't going to sell. And so that's why they try to take established characters, figuring they'd keep all those same readers. I mean, there was a time when they took the Incredible Hulk book and all of a sudden kind of changed him over to Hercules. Sales plummeted. People didn't want that. When Tony Stark was split between, the young girl and Doctor Doom, the two titles combined didn't sell what regular Tony Stark did. It was, just the same thing with the Hulk. I mean, the Hulk, the Iron Man. I mean, every time they take those two books, didn't equal what the one regular book of the core material. So you can't take what people want and try to make and sell them something else. If somebody comes in and says, I want an ice cream cone, you can't hand them a cup of mud and said, "Oh, this is good." You know, somebody might like mud, but you know, maybe they don't want to take a mud bath. But that's not the person who wants the ice cream. People have different tastes, and you've got to create something for those tastes. You can't shoehorn something and just put another name on it.
And you also talked about how this was actually brought up to Marvel directly at the retailer convention.
Yeah, I got ugly last year. Retailers stood up and said, you know, this social justice warrior stuff isn't selling, and a lot of guys applauded him. Well, then the other group of guys, and again, there's nothing wrong with diversity. I mean, so I understand where the guys who want to promote diversity are coming from, and I'm with them on that. But the fact was, he was right. It wasn't selling. Well, they started booing the guys who applauded him. Marvel called security to get him on the guys who were applauding, and on the guy who spoke up. That was the end of the thing. And then later during that same show, Axel Alonso said not only were they going to continue with the Social Justice Warrior program, but that the next year the entire Marvel comic was going to be aimed at content for the LBGT community. And you know, two weeks later, he was out of a job. You know, that's the whole thing. You can't force people to buy something. You know, it's okay to make product for everyone. There's nothing wrong with that. But you can't force everyone to buy what's aimed at 2% of your market.
Yeah, and Peter, where you've gotten beat up on this, I guess, is because of the creators not wanting to hear this rebuke from the readership, they started doing these massive blocks on Twitter using lists of names where they just say, okay, well, if I don't like what you say, I'm going to block you and everybody who follows you. So there's like, you know, 150 people at a shot. And you came up with a policy at Alterna that says, hey, you know, block the people who are being idiots to you, but do not use the blockchains. And you just you've been getting kicked every single day for that business decision. Is that getting any better for you?
I guess define better.
Is it slowing down? Are people starting to forget about it and just say, hey, you know what, let's get back to reading comics instead of worrying about what their social media policy is?
I think I'd like to say yes, but I mean, even today there was 3 messages that popped in my feed about something or other with some craziness. There usually seems to be about 3 to 4 every day. Even though I at this point I've been muting people. I've got over 1,000 people muted. I don't block anyone because I view when you block someone, you're basically communicating, I don't want you to see what I have to say. And when you mute someone, I'm basically saying, I don't want to see what you have to say. So I don't mind if they see what I have to say. I'm not saying anything bad. I'm not saying anything vulgar or disgusting or you know, inflammatory like that. But I don't want to have to constantly see it every single day from people that are trying to just get me, obviously, to argue back with them or waste my time and energy. So what's funny about the social media policy is we didn't really have anyone that I would consider a creator at Alterna that was using block lists. This is the way Alterna is basically structured. We have contracts with creators who then hire people on a work for hire basis, or perhaps they have creator ownership split or have other subcontracts with people that they are not directly contracted with Alterna. I only have one contract with one person. It's not necessarily something that the entire creative team on a book is contracted. So no one at Alterna that was a creator that I had contracted was using a block list. No one was using a blockchain. No one was getting harassed. Nothing like that whatsoever. We were basically getting flack because the social media policy, while it says that, you know, I'm not condoning the use of those things because they greatly limit your promotion and your marketing, which for an indie company, an indie creator especially, social media is a wonderful tool for that. You're doing yourself a disservice, even more so than if you just view yourself as you're blocklisting people and you're taking what they have to say out of you know, your timeline or whatever else. That kind of thing is secondary to the fact that you are doing major damage to your own brand, to your book, to the hard work of your team on that book, all that kind of stuff. When it came into play was when there was a letterer on a book that was using a block list. And the only way that we knew was because we had promoted their tag on the book when we had promoted the book. and people were saying about 12 to 15 people were messaging me and the creator of the book saying, hey, this person has me blocked. I've never even interacted with them before. And so when I approached the creator, and the creator of the book then approached his letterer and asked him, are you using a block list? You know, these people are all saying that you have them blocked. Have you been getting harassed? What's going on? He said, well, I've never interacted with those people, but yeah, I do use a block list. And basically, you know, this is the kind of thing is because of this Comicsgate stuff, and that he was going to basically keep that block list going. So I had offered a solution, which was basically, okay, well, we'll keep him on the book. We just won't tag him in posts. This way, people don't have to constantly get upset by being blocked and all that other kind of stuff, and they won't directly have any kind of impact necessarily on the morale of the creative team.
People generally don't care who the letterer on a book is anyway.
Exactly. We just did that, honestly, again, to promote and market him, to boost his profile. So I said, okay, we'll do that then. This way, no one gets any flack or any grief for it. They, you know, the creator of the book thought that was a great idea, sent that back, and the letterer said, you know what, I quit. And that's how that went down. He wasn't fired, he wasn't forced off the book. I didn't say fire him or the book's getting dropped. None of that. And I have email chains to prove it. So why the story keeps going back and forth, I have no idea, but that's how stories usually are. And so because of that, a lot of other things spiraled out. The fact that some people didn't understand or agree with why I felt the need to thank our readers, no matter of what political leaning they were on. That kind of stuff, just to me, it's irrelevant. You are purchasing our comic, you are enjoying our comic. You say thank you when someone says, hey, I enjoyed this story. I'm going to show it on social media and hopefully get other people interested too. That is just business 101. You thank a customer. And that's apparently not something that's an applauded practice among many people in the industry.
Well, I know that I've got the two Twitter accounts. I've got my account, and then of course there's the Critical Blast account at Critical Blast. Please follow. And it has been caught up in block bots because we do follow people who have things happening. You know, if there's a story, and Comicsgate was definitely a story, we wanted to see everything people were saying about that, so we started following them. And I think these people who run block bots look at a follower of a user account like you're a follower of Christ or something, rather than somebody who's just listening to what's going on so you can be aware of it. So I have several creators who have blocked Critical Blast simply because we were following people who were in the Comicsgate community to get their take on things. So they've cut off, you know, access to journalists who cover the comic book industry, cover their stuff, and it can't be done. And of course, the real insidious thing about the block list is that it's not to shut out all these voices that you don't want to hear, but it's to deplatform the one voice that you don't want to hear, because now you're saying, well, you were cut off because you follow this guy. Quit following that guy and you won't be on my block list.
And the thing is that often backfires because of the fact that people will follow, unfollow. I follow over 50,000 people on Twitter. So when people were putting me on block lists, I'm like, I don't even know who I'm following half the time, because I'm just following people I've interacted with, people who've liked a tweet, people who've retweeted a tweet. Anyone that shows any kind of support, I generally try to follow them back. And so I got caught up on a bunch of block lists for one reason or another. And I wasn't even aware of the whole thing because until I started getting submissions in, and then I started looking at some promising submissions, and I would look at the creative teams and see how do they interact on social media. Do they have a social media presence? Especially Twitter was one of the places where we found a lot of success with our marketing. And then I would find sometime I'd be blocked by these people, and I go, I never even interacted with them. Why am I being blocked by these creators? And over again, this would happen. And eventually I kind of just put the word out, you know, why would you block potential publishers, creators, etc. you've never even interacted with? It doesn't make any sense, especially if you are a creator in this community. It's a relatively small community in comics, and it would be completely against your promotional marketing, any kind of stuff, to block people who could potentially provide a job for you and a networking situation. It just doesn't make any sense at all. So that's when I started becoming aware that there even was block lists going around. And this was probably 2 years ago. This wasn't even at the height of anything. The seeds of this have been happening for years now. It's not something that just all of a sudden one day, boom, someone came on the scene and it got crazy out of nowhere. And then 5 days later, the whole thing turned into Comicsgate. This stuff has been happening for 3 to 5 years, to my estimation, and it's to me it looks more like a pushback reaction that consumers and other professionals are having towards being treated unprofessionally.
Yeah. Now, Michael, you're blessed to not have a Twitter account. And I would recommend not getting one. But the whole Blockbot thing would be akin to having you putting a bouncer outside the door to your comic shop and just, saying, oh, no, you're not allowed to come in and buy comics. You can't spend your money here. But it does definitely limit the marketing and what you can do. And on that, I want to take a little break here and let the people know Critical Blast is trying to do live streams here because we do need to relocate. We're trying to raise some funds here by the 1st of April. And rather than do a GoFundMe or an IGG, we actually have things that are done that don't cost $25 and that don't have a waiting period. We have our debut modern anthology book that is out called Gods and Services, which is basically about gods who are disused and out of work, and they are being sold at a little curiosity shop to normal, unsuspecting human beings whom they are then bound to help or help in whatever they think they need to do. If that doesn't appeal to you, we also have our t-shirt shop at TeePublic, and we have several designs out there. And if you don't see anything you like, we do have a little PayPal link down there if you'd like to just donate a couple of bucks to the channel to help us keep going. We definitely appreciate that. One of these days we will be monetized and we can do super chats. That out of the way, Gods and Services. Michael, you're actually a contributor to that. You did one story, and the god you chose was Ganesh.
Well, I was just kind of I really wasn't trying to narrow it down to one. I mean, yeah, no, that is the name for the character of an idol that was kind of described in there. But I was trying to be kind of generalistic in my story there, and just the question of who is God, and which the answer would be to different people.
Right, and definitely, if that kind of a story is something that appeals to the readers here, you want to read Michael's story and read the other stories. We have several authors contributing to that. We have John Della Rose is in there. We have Ira Bloom is in there. We have David Peterson. All three of those guys are well-known authors who stepped in to help us out here. So we also have several never before published authors. So it's a good mix of people who've been published, people who've been published big, and people who are just getting started. We got a wide range of voices and a very high quality product. Over Alterna, Peter, what do we got coming from Alterna here in the future that people can be looking forward to?
Anything that they want to find out about Alterna, you can usually go to alternacomics.com, go on the schedule page. We usually list things about 2-3 months in advance. We've got a whole lot of comics coming out. Even this Wednesday on the 30th, we've got 4 titles coming out. 3 of them are #1s. So feel free, go to your local comic shop, check them out. You can go to alternacomics.com/retailers also and find a local comic shop near you that carries Alterna.
And if you're in the Little Rock, Arkansas area, please do go to the comic book store on JFK in North Little Rock, or Collector's Edition on Treasure Hill Road in Little Rock, Arkansas, and let Michael know that you'd like to pull some alternate titles in there into your pull list and check them out. $1.50 a copy, guys. So that you can't get a $1.50 book from DC or Marvel.
No,
but you can, but it's in the bins, right?
It's in the bins. You can probably get a quarter book.
Well, you can get a $1 book, but it's going to be a True Believers reprint.
This is true. So, you can probably get those just as cheap in the original format. Michael, you've also got some other books coming out here. Let's take a minute to plug those. You want to talk about the Tarzan book that's coming out here and your other stuff? Yeah,
I've got a new short story going to be in the next the Volume 1 or Volume 2 #1 issue of Kursova magazine, which ships in March, titled by the name of Tarzan and the Mysterious She. I co-wrote this with another fellow you might have heard of by the name of Edgar Rice Burroughs. He's, of course, the creator of Tarzan. This is a fragment that they discovered had just been laying around. He first wrote it back in 1930, wrote it a couple different times, and then kind of walked away with it. And there was a change of his editors at Blue Book, which is where he originally published the Jungle Tales, and that's the setting of this story. And so it was one of the discoveries in the safe. A lot of different writers had looked at it, and they didn't know what to do with it. Danton Burroughs, his grandson, I was friends with him back in 2005. He said, "Hey, you want to take a look at it, see if there's anything you want to do with it?" Once I looked at it, whatever other people saw as a problem, I saw, hey, that's an advantage or something. I definitely have a story for it, and everybody really seems to like it. And it's kind of funny because I was talking with Alex, the publisher of Kosova, about another project and some other stuff I was doing with Burroughs in the future, and I told him about this thing I'd done in the past. He goes, "Hey, would you mind if I take a look at it?" And within a couple of hours, I'm getting an email going, "It's like McDonald's. I'm loving it. I got to have it. What will it take to get this?" And so we worked out a deal. And but then the Burroughs people started to say, "Well, we don't want to put Burroughs' name on there." And like, why? And I just couldn't understand it. We were actually, the day of signing the contracts, we finally figured out that, well, they didn't realize that was written by Burroughs. Because, again, like I told you, it was a fragment. Well, Danton, the reason I wrote it in 2005 is being published in 2019. Danton died tragically back like in 2008, I believe it was. What happened was he'd worked his entire life for his grandfather's company, Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated. That day, he had worked his way to where he was the president of Edgar Rice Burroughs Inc., probably the day of his greatest triumph. That night, there's a fire at his home, burned up his watch collection, his rock collection, and a lot of transparencies of his father, who was John Coleman Burroughs, who illustrated a lot of the Burroughs books. A lot of his original stuff was lost, destroyed. And now Danton he had some health problems. He had Parkinson's. So they were moving everything they could, trying to deal with the fire and save what they could. And he had a heart attack that night and died. Well, what I didn't realize was that Edgar Rice Burroughs lost all track of the fragment. They didn't even know the fragment existed from that point on. And then once the day we announced the story, then another fellow, Bill Hillman, who runs the Herbzine website, it's like, "Hey, I've got the fragment. I'm the one who typed it up. That was the fragment that you were working from." So that's kind of the story behind the story. The story itself is pretty good. It's set in the days of the Jungle Tales, and Tarzan's hanging out with the apes, and hears that, hey, there's another person with pale skin like you at the Gomangani village with blonde hair. And that's where Burroughs stopped, and everybody's like, "Well, I don't know what to do with it," because Jane was the first blonde white person he met. And like, I know exactly what I want to do with that story. I can tell you why I did it the way I did, but I want to kind of let people have a chance to read it first. But that was one of the reasons why a lot of the writers did not know what to do with it. And so that's kind of the genesis of the story. Now, I had done previous work with the Burroughs people. Last year, I published a 4-volume art chronology of the art history of Edgar Rice Burroughs. It was 1,200 pages, 5,000 images in a 16-pound slipcase box set. Volume 1 was all the pulps ever. Volume 2 was all the paperbacks and hardcovers in both the U.S. and the U.K. Volume 3 was all the American Tarzan comics. And Volume 4 was all his other American comics, plus all the British Tarzan comics. And they made more British Tarzan comics just in the 50s alone than have ever been made in America. The Brits love their English lord, who is also a jungle lord. So that was another project I did with the Burroughs people. I've got another thing that's going to start here pretty soon. I'm doing an online strip for them, where I'm adapting Burroughs' story of Beyond the Farthest Star. I'm scripting it and coloring it, and John Lucas is doing the artwork on it. And so once John turns in another 3 strips, that will start being released on a weekly basis. So done a lot of work with him. And then, of course, I'm writing on my next Wild Stars novel. This is my 35th anniversary of my Wild Stars. I published Volume 3 last year in a Kosova. He did a special edition, which is his only sold-out edition. And and I'm working on another one. It's really kind of a 3.5 that I'll put in a Volume 3 book when I publish it later this year as part of the 35th anniversary. And I'm also talking with the manufacturer about a Wild Stars board game that I designed a few years back, about trying to get that out this year, too. So got a lot going on. And I ran for public office, too.
That's true. Well, nobody on Twitter cares about politics, Michael. I can assure you of that. So if you ever got on Twitter, you would never see anybody making a political comment. I'm waiting for the lightning to hit me here. Getting back to the comics and how they work in the store again, and the ordering process, and this is going to be one of the last things I touch on here. Michael, what would be the paradigm shift if all of a sudden you had returnability on product?
Well, I would gamble a whole lot more then. It's just there are products now made available for returnability. Reason I don't do any of that is I'm still ordering tight because I want to know what I'm going to sell through. Because the way returnables are now is you don't get your full money back. You got to pay to ship them back. There's like a several month lag. A lot of times you don't get to notice that it was returnable until you find out after the fact. Oh, this was returned when, and there's not a real good streamlined system set up for that. And then times I return things, didn't get my full credit, then I got to fight to get the rest of my money back. So right now, just trying to do returns is a nightmare. If there was a returnable system, I'd probably do a lot more with it. But the problem, the reason why people really have never done a returnable is if I don't want to see lower discounts. Retailers need a little bit more of a profit margin. It's tough out here because it's like everything's kind of stacked against us. I was telling you earlier about having 10 to 20% damages every week on my diamond order. Then we got credit card processing fees, which just go up every year. I finally instituted a $5 minimum charge, and that literally reduced my credit card fees by 1/3. I mean, people come in, I would take a plastic bag and slap down a credit card for it. You're losing money on the sale. So, I mean, there are just so many things that retailers have been hit. We got, expenses are going up, wages are going up, everything's going up on us all the time. The profit margins haven't gone up on a comic book. I've still got the same discount that I had probably back in 1982. My profit margins have not gone up with the comics at all this time in 37 years. It's kind of tough for retailers out here. There's a reason why there's maybe only 1,000 of us actual real retailers out here. You get different numbers, but Diamond will count anybody who, there was a bait and tackle shop here in Arkansas that was counted as being a comic book store because they bought a few for a rack. So it's a tough business. I mean, we need all the help we can get. And one of the things Peter was talking about doing was the $25 free shipping. That's something I would probably take another look at his product for and see if that's something I can swing. Because back when I told you how earlier they used to be like 7 distributors, you did $25 in graphic novels. You had 2-day shipping. You had a graphic novel restocked right away. So you were able to really compete against Amazon and all those guys because you get the stuff as fast as them. Nowadays, unless you want to completely lose all of your profit potential in shipping fees and just run laps, it's like a 2-week turnaround to get a special order in. So we've really been put at a disadvantage and taking steps back on the services we have available to us. Retailers, we need all the help we can get.
Okay. Peter, I just teed it up for you there.
What was that?
I just teed it up for you there on the whole returnability thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're going to be doing returnability very, very soon. We already kind of have started with select shops, but it's mostly because of the fact that we keep selling through a ton of comics and I keep going back to print with them. And instead of doing that, I know that there's shops that may have, not a ton of shops have this because it's been very difficult to scrape the copies I need from these shops, but a bunch of shops still do have things on the shelf from Alterna that they could possibly trade in for us, or they can sell through to us. It's been great dealing with shops on that level too, because they're able to have a little more security in knowing that they can order something from us. They can order maybe a little bit more and go, well, you know what, at least in a couple months, if it's still sitting there, we can just send an email to Alterna, let them know, and then we can do a trade-in or we can do a buyback. And it's just, I think the risk has to be spread around. Right now, there's too much risk on the LCS, and with the way that it is, it's not a situation that I think Diamond can necessarily just start doing an initiative like that because of the publishers involved. But the publishers have to start trying to do something. This buyback trade-in initiative that we're doing is not through Diamond. It is direct through us. So it doesn't matter if you order through Diamond, we'll still take the books. But I'm finding a ton of shops, they don't really have many books to spare, which is a good problem for them to have. But for us, it leaves us kind of wanting because I could really use a lot of the books that we're sold out of.
All right, we have Midnight Mystery in the chat here. We got Bernie. He's the creator and writer of the series. It's an Alterna series. So I'm sure he was glad to hear that Michael might be taking a look at the Alterna titles. And if you do get Midnight Mystery #1 back ordered, of course, you want to start at the beginning, you'll see that great, big, beautiful Critical Blast ad on the back page there. I don't know if that gets reprinted on the reprint books, Peter, but we were definitely happy to put that on there. I'll tell you, we made that decision at the height of all the let's just call it persecution, because that's what it was persecution. And you did that live stream that was literally a watershed moment in comics about the whole policies at Altern and what you guys were doing. So we want to do that again here in the future. As soon as we get as soon as we get all our other ducks in a row, we'll be back in that particular market. It seems like I was going to go somewhere else here with this, and now I can't recall what it was.
Probably my phone disrupted you.
Well, no, I talked about my own thing there for a second, and that's what threw me off. Oh, I know what it was. With the numbers that come out, and we see that the comics are going down, one of the arguments is that, well, they're not really going down because digital is taking the place of these lost sales that were sales of physical copies. What I'm seeing is that whatever a physical copy sells, the average is that 10 to 15% of that is digital. Now, there are titles like Goddess Mode, I guess, which is selling a way more in the digitals than it is in the physicals. And I'm sure that, for every one of those, there's one that sells 1,000 physicals that didn't sell a single digital. So that's where that 10 to 15% average comes out overall. But, how obviously the LCSs can't be a fan of the digital comic.
Digital has not hurt me at all. Actually, digital has been a good tool for me. It is so funny because again, I've been doing this 37 years, and every time I talk to publishers, I'm like, why don't you guys advertise? And they're of the attitude, well, that's your job. You advertise our product for us so you can sell it. And like, you've got you're a big, billion dollar company or whatever, or you take the whole market put together, and how come you go, and so what happened was when they decided they wanted to start pushing digital, all of a sudden they found money for national advertising, and they thought every comic book store in America was going to collapse like a row of tower record stores when music went digital. But that's not what happened. Our sales went up because people said, oh, wow, because the comics, when they got mature, they got pulled out of all the grocery stores, all the 7-Elevens, Walmarts in the South quit selling comics because it got too dicey because they weren't properly packaged there for a while. And now they have age guidelines. That's helped quite a bit. But, they got lost. They got pulled in all the places they were being sold. People thought comics weren't made anymore. So all of a sudden they start advertising nationally. It goes, oh, comic books. Yeah, I don't want to read digital, but or even if they tried digital, like, okay, now I want to go get the real thing. And they would come find me. And what happened was the more they tried to put all the stores out of business, our sales went up. And they're like, wait a minute, we're advertising this competing package and your sales are going up. That wasn't supposed to work that way. And so digital hasn't hurt me at all. It actually is a driver for new business because they're advertising it. It's a way for people to discover the book, to get interested, and then they come to me for the real thing. Another thing too is like the supposedly declining sales. Like I said, my sales are up, but I think what's happening is it's a market correction because you had a lot of other retailers ordering stuff that didn't sell because, well, it's Marvel, we got to carry it. And, even if it's something different. And, now I think they're starting to realize what does sell and what doesn't sell. And you're seeing maybe a market correction by some other retailers, because I've read other articles by other fellows with other stores in other parts of the country talking about how they're going to start ordering basically how I've been ordering, like, a lot tighter to what reserves are, what really moves activity. They don't, because you think Marvel and DC, half the books they put out every month is a #1 book. Used to, a #1 book was a big deal. Not anymore. Now it's almost a curse. People want that higher number. When Marvel started putting those legacy numbers on there, that helped them out quite a bit. So this whole restart, relaunch, every time you say, okay, this is a new jumping on point, it's somebody else's jumping off point. And then you create this whole convoluted roadmap, that you can't find your way on how to read a story. And it's difficult for us to say, well, let's see, okay, maybe you want volume 3, or no, you want volume 5. It just, it's tough for us to even tell what order they're supposed to read the stories in. And used to, if you could count, you could read any comic book series all the way back to the first issue. Not so much anymore. You got to have the roadmap, and it's more of a roadblock. So yeah, there's a lot of things going on there.
I've got another message here from Bernie at Midnight Mystery. He basically wants to know, what can the comic book creators, not just the publisher, but what can the creators do to help out the retailers? He's talking about issuing previews, putting out signature cards, prints. What can they do to help you sell more of their comics? Well, the main thing is get people asking me about it. Get them interested in it, however that is. Get something out there. Show them teasers, this and that. It's like so many times I'll look at it, and this goes back to Marvel and DC, especially Marvel. It's like they're free comic book day books. 2 of them were to be announced later. Don't even know what it was we were ordering. We had to turn in a number and just pull it out of thin air. Didn't even know what it was. There have been many times Marvel will advertise a book, TBA, to be announced. Don't know who the creators are, don't know anything about it, but you're going to want lots. Well, traditionally, if you don't promote it
it's not going to sell. So I know when I see that, that's not going to sell worth squat, because there hasn't been the process of getting people interested in it. And so that's what creators do. They want to get their books selling in the stores, get people interested. I don't know if it's, just show a lot of sample work, whatever, but you'll just get the word out there. Hey, look at what I'm doing, and get them coming into the comic book store. Ask for this at your local comic book store and let them know. And there's also a little bit of a timing thing in there too, because you don't want them to ask too far ahead where it's not in the catalog yet. And you don't want to have them ask after the book's already come out and now they're sold out. So you want to try to get it in that window where we're placing our orders. So like if I'm turning in my order at the end of January, you want to get people starting to ask about the first week or no later than the second week of January. And so you'd want to start doing your promotion in December, let them know, hey, this is going to be coming out in a few weeks, and you'll be sure to ask for this, and you'll get people interested, because like I was saying earlier, a multiple of zero is a zero. And so if I have one person, well, I'll take a look at it, and then I'll kind of, okay, well, what do I think of it? But the more people interested in something, the more it tells me, hey, this has got some legs. This is something somebody might be interested in.
So like if 3 people ask for something, you might order 6 copies.
If I think it looks good, I might order 9, 10, might even go 20. I mean, it just all depends how it's like. And this goes way back when. A fellow by the name of Terry Moore did a comic called Strangers in Paradise. Well, I had never heard of it, never heard of Terry Moore. Well, this nice little old lady comes walking into my North Little Rock store going, well, she'd heard her sister's son-in-law was going to do an adult comic. And she had gone to all the adult bookstores in town wanting to support him. And I'm sure there were books in the air, and it's like it's a raid when she walked through the door. And, because she did not look like somebody you would see walking into a bookstore. And I'm sure they were like, oh, what is happening here? Well, so she came into me and said, okay, yeah, I can special order this for you. And when I got it in, I took a look at it, obviously I didn't want to read her book, but I glanced at it enough to say, hey, I think there's a market for this. And so I started ordering a lot of copies right from the door. I ordered more of that book right then. And so for the size of my stores, I'm probably one of the top selling stores for Strangers in Paradise. I still have a following of Strangers in Paradise to this day. I mean, so it's been a good seller from the beginning, because one person came in and said, hey, can you get this for me? Well, now I've got the book coming through, and I get a look at it too, just a cursory look, but enough to say, hey, there's something here. And that's a lot of how I start on a lot of books there. And Terry Moore's always sold here very well. And I had one young lady who looked like Francine, and so you had a huge following for Strangers in Paradise down here there for a while.
Okay, I'm going to get to a couple of the chats here. George Peter Gatsis is directly talking to us, says, what about creators who create creator-owned figurines based on independent comic book characters? Is there a market? And if so, how would the business model look like? Michael, you sell toys. You can address that in just a second here. Alterna Comics, hey there, track me down, Google me, and let's talk. That's George Peter Gatsis. That's George Peter Gatsis again. Okay, so we got somebody interested here. Meowcat's talking about the Gods and Services book. If you really want to do signal boost, promote your book via a $2 super chat on Ethan Van Sciver's live stream. We did that via a $7 super chat on Ethan Van Sciver's Christmas Eve live stream, and nobody was watching apparently, which is hard to believe for an EVS live stream that nobody would be there. But yeah, we did do that. We'd love to do it again. We'd love to be on EVS's show again sometime talking about it and getting that boost. So maybe I'll chat with him, see if we can get on there sometime soon. Also going to be on Edwin Boyette's show sometime here in the near future. And also talking with Tug as soon as Tug can get his super chats back on. He's not doing any super chats right now. But Michael, the business model for toys, especially with the figurines of independent creator-owned characters. I know you carry the Marvel Legends and stuff like that come out, but I also know that the same Marvel Legends figures I saw there one year were the same Marvel Legends figures I saw there the next year.
What happened with that was Walmart carried them. And Walmart was selling them less than my cost. They got them a month before me, and that's why I quit carrying Marvel Legends. Now I will carry Marvel Select because that's not at Walmart. So right now I try to carry things that are not going to be at the chain stores, because Walmart is an Arkansas-based corporation. So I'm in the heart of Wally World down here, and so here in Little Rock area there was a huge war going on there for a while between KB Toys, Toys R Us, Walmart. Well, now Walmart's the only player left, so that tells you how volatile and toxic it got to be to try to carry toys there for a while. There were just no margins in it, because basically I'd get in a case of 12, and people just wanted that one Chase figure that never got put out at Walmart because the employees always would snag it. Well, you can't order 12 of something and sell one and stay in business very long. So I've kind of backed out of toys for a long time. Now that everybody else is gone, I'm going to start moving back into it, but I'm easing into it because I got to figure out, what it is that people want. But again, it goes back to the same formula. Get people asking for it. Somebody says, hey, I want this. My background before I opened up my store was in purchasing. I was a purchaser and a division manager for International Graphics. And so somebody says, I want this. I'm on it. I'm going to get it for you.
You know, that's a very good point to bring up, and I think it's a very obvious point that gets easily overlooked. That if you want to buy something at a place, tell that place you want to buy it there, and that works for the local comic book shop as well as it works for your local Walmart. I know that we've gone into Walmarts before, and my wife's wanted to buy something like liquid smoke. She cooks with liquid smoke. We moved to a new area, and they didn't have it there, and she said, "Where's it at?" "Well, we don't carry it." "Well, I want to buy it." Well, guess what? 2 weeks later, it starts showing up on the shelf because somebody asked for it.
Right.
But in regards to Walmart and the sale of comic books, we know that Walmart's selling the DC 100-page giants, which are Walmart exclusive, and they're largely reprints with a new story. But you can also get the Marvel grab bags now of comics. And right there in the front of the grab bag, you're going to see a Marvel comic that was brand new 2 months ago for the full cover price with no returnability. So that was the thing I was trying to remember earlier. What kind of an impact are you seeing at the stores regarding any of those Marvel titles? Is that having any impact on you at all, that Marvel is selling them through Walmart at a discounted price with a returnability factor?
Right now, the only thing I'm seeing is people buying them at Walmart wanting to sell them to me. Like, "Oh, hey, this is a controversial issue." I'm like, "No, I don't want it." You know, I'm not very happy about the fact that there's comic book product that I don't even get an opportunity to buy. And, you know, that Walmart says, well, this is, I mean, not Walmart, but, you know, DC says this is to drive people into your store. Well, wait a minute. Now you're actually driving people away from our store because I don't carry everything you make anymore. That was one of the big things. That was why the comic book industry was founded. Used to, you wanted to collect comics, you were trying to get them off the newsstand. No one newsstand hardly ever carried everything. So you had to like figure out what the route was, a delivery guy, and follow them around because it was in those old wire racks, and everybody would take, "Oh, it's a spinner rack." And they just kind of flip through everyone. No, they're all the same, but people just love to do that. And all of a sudden you got a ding in every one. So if you wanted to get a nice near mint copy, you had to be right behind the delivery guy as soon as you put them in the rack before anybody else could handle them and mutilate them. So when comic book shops opened up, hey, they've got everything. One-stop shopping. And I don't like the DC's taking that away. I mean, I don't have a problem if they want to sell something in Walmart. You know, the more places comics are for sale, I think the better for the industry because you've got more chances for people to be introduced into the hobby. I just don't like being excluded. It reminds me too much of I'm probably a little bit older than you guys, and so I probably remember something you don't remember. But back when I was young, they had slot car racing was huge. You know, nowadays you want to buy a slot car, you're going to go buy a box set at Walmart. It's going to take you about as long to put it together as it is going to take it apart because you're not going to play with it very long because you get real bored running that loop real quick. But when I was a kid, there were stores bigger than my stores with these gigantic monolithic racetracks and just layer after layer, and you would pay money to go in and to rent time to run your cars on those tracks. Well, they didn't make the money just off the track rental. It was also the cars that they sold. Along comes Walmart, says, "Hey, we want to get in on this. Sell us those cars." So they started getting the cars before them, sold them for less than them. Well, all the car sales went away to all these stores. Wasn't enough to keep the tracks open, so all the tracks closed down. And slot cars, I mean, it used to be, it was kind of like Wizards of the Coast of its day. I mean, you had competition. Everybody wanted certain models of cars. People got in races, against each other. Now, hardly anybody does slot car racing. It's a forgotten hobby. And because they got greedy, well, with a big order with Walmart. And what DC's doing right now kind of reminds me of that. It's like they're just, handing the keys over to, them. And a similar thing happened in my industry. Back when manga started getting big. Now, I used to be a regular guest speaker at a thing called, it was a governor's school for gifted and talented called the Summer Lorette University for Youth. When it was held at University of Little Rock, I was a guest speaker for like 15 years in a row. I was the only guy who ever went out there more than 3 times. I was out there every year. And I was talking about comics to the kids. But one year, all of a sudden, it's all young girls. I'm like, wow, usually it's all guys. And so, I did more listening than I did talking that time. And sure enough, I was figuring out that, I thought I was being smart by selling out of the manga. All of a sudden, I realized I could be selling a whole lot more manga. And I was listening to what it is that they wanted. And so all of a sudden, my manga sales just went through the roof. And then all of a sudden, 1 month comes along, and because every day I'd be the only guy in the store all day long. It'd be all these young girls coming in buying all the manga, and then it just disappeared like instantly. And it happened to every retailer in America on the direct sale market. Well, what happened was all the chain stores said, "Hey, we want to get into that manga thing," and so the publishers were selling them to them for less. Those guys were selling it less than my cost, and they got returnability. Well, all of a sudden, I just had months of stuff that didn't sell a thing. And so all of us retailers, we got stuck with these huge masses of orders because we buy non-returnable. And, so what happened to the publishers, though, is once things started being returned, they got wiped out because they didn't get the sales they wanted. They didn't have the margins in there to cover all that stock coming back damaged and half read. And so now they want to get back in my stores, but they've already told the people to go shop somewhere else. Once you tell people to buy their product somewhere else, and the customer leaves, they may be gone forever. And so I do not like the precedent that DC is setting. They're just two good examples about how devastating that can be long-term.
Okay, and that's apparently happening with Marvel too, since they're also showing up with the grab bags in Marvel, and they're not even.
No, they're starting to do it too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's you can get like Domino number 8 in a grab bag for 3 comics for $5 now, and that's definitely got to be hitting into you.
Oh yeah.
But on the subject of getting comics into places other than the LCS, Peter, bring you back in here for a little bit. What is Alterna doing to get comic books in other places? Actively, I mean, I know any place can order because they're going through you directly, but do you have any kind of market pushes that are trying to hit up other stores?
Yeah, well, we distribute to newsstands, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, places like that, and a couple independent newsstands as well. We also have a bunch of different newsstands in Europe that carry the books. It's something that I think if you're going to get, it's very difficult to do the same kind of mentality for an indie company when you're pushing product than it is for a company like a Marvel and DC. I think if Marvel and DC want to start getting comics in more places, that's great. But what we keep seeing is that the push revolves either around a product that is not of similar nature to what you can find in a comic shop. A comic shop can't order that product, or you find that it's a deep discounted product being offered. If they want to really start acclimating readers to getting towards comic shops, you have to kind of start offering things on a similar scale. Otherwise, let's say the 100-page giants that are in Walmart, if you're a reader, and especially if the mindset is they want new readers to get to this book. So a new reader comes in, not aware of comic books, not aware of the market, not aware of anything else. They think that book looks good. They pick it up, 100 pages for $5. Wow, okay, that sounds great. Let's say now that reader does go to a comic shop. So that reader now goes to the store, picks up a comic that's like 32 pages or so, and it's pretty much the same cost as what they got for the 100 pages at Walmart. Now that reader's going to feel ripped off and confused. So that's not a good game plan to have that market have a crossover. You need something of similar scale, of similar cost, that kind of stuff. You also need an entry point product that people are not going to be confused about. It's very interesting because we're having success with Newsstand on our ongoings, but not on our miniseries. So an ongoing, it came out on a Wednesday, and the new ICYMI title that's going to start coming out. I noticed that it came out on a Wednesday. Our order numbers kept increasing from issue to issue because the sell-through kept getting better and better. It came out on a Wednesday as a horror, fantasy, sci-fi short story anthology. So it's all one and done type of stuff. Anybody can just pick it up. It's got great cover art on it. And it's just an interesting read. And there's nothing like you feel you're missing out on or you feel confused by if you start to pick up any issue at any point. If you have an ongoing story, of course, that has a character like a Spider-Man, a Batman, etc., you need those stories to be present at Newsstand. That's how you'd succeed on Newsstand. If you have stories on Newsstand that involve overarching many issues to tell a story, you're not really going to have success there because the Newsstand has returnability, so they're not going to keep back issues. So what you're going to have is you're going to have people going in there, picking up an issue, very confused as to what even occurred before, and they might not even want to know what's going to happen after. So it doesn't really lend itself well towards a market that induces purchasing and this and that and whatever. But I think if we want to see comics really start to grow, we need comics that are more affordably priced, aimed at kids, and in places where kids would shop. That's the biggest problem I find in comics in general. And it's a problem with any product that doesn't do well. It's either a quality issue or it's a marketing audience issue. So if you have a great product, let's say, but the sales really aren't that good, it might be because, if not always because, of the fact that your marketing is awful. Your marketing might not be hitting anyone. Some people don't even market these products. I know a lot of people that they just make the product and then they walk away and then they think that's it. People will find it. That's almost always not the case. So if your marketing's great and your product is awful, you actually will probably have better sales than someone with a great product that doesn't market. So if you can do both, and if you're a big company, you should absolutely be able to do both. Your marketing needs to be spot on. Your products need to be in as many places as possible. And especially right now, we have brand awareness through the roof for comic books and comic book properties in particular, obviously for Marvel and DC. They're not going to have to necessarily try as hard to break the barrier of marketing, but they're just going to have to, that awareness of getting people to understand where things are available, where to go. Now, we're seeing that they can't even really do that for the most part in terms of promotion for local comic shops. When it comes to national distribution and something that has a wider scale to it, I can't see them taking that promotion and extending it on that level. It's not going to really be there. But I think that they're looking at that and going, well, if we're nationally distributed, we don't really need to market as much because the store is everywhere and the product will then be everywhere too. So I think it's kind of like a weird double-edged sword for every single move being made right now, because everything's only being halfway done. We're noticing that word of mouth is the best form of promotion for books. I'm noticing that when it comes to comic book reviews on websites and things like that, people don't seem to care. They don't seem to trust them anymore. I'm noticing that people seem to care more about if someone purchases the book and makes a YouTube video about it or tweets about it or shows a picture about it, then they'll be interested in the book. But this kind of traditional level of marketing and all these other things, it seems to be just within the industry, people seem to pay attention to it, but the actual buyers themselves are paying attention to different things. And I think that there's this disconnect that's growing daily between how books are marketed to actual consumers and how books are being marketed towards each other within the industry. And I think if we get a little bit more forward thinking and thinking outside the box, I think the industry could reverse some of the damage that's been done, but it's going to take some effort.
Yeah. You talk about the marketing being done at the local comic shop level because, well, the books are going to be there. Let the comic shop do the marketing for us and tell people that the books are there. That's kind of like, the movie production company saying, well, we'll put the movies out. Let's let the local theaters tell people the movies are there. I mean, can you imagine the kind of sales that a comic book would have if a DC or a Marvel took an upcoming storyline and made a movie trailer for it and put it on television?
Yeah, that was great. That was what was so crazy what Marvel was doing the last 2 years. Here they had these movies out, which were the biggest advertisements. I mean, people were paying money to go see these advertisements for the product line, and they were making no product to match with the movies. I mean, would you advertise, hey, we got this new refrigerator out? When you walk, oh, no, sorry, we just sell, we only sell little footstools, just, you got to tell people what it is they're wanting. And the movies were such a great source of advertising for Marvel all that time. And now they're going to, when they start making product for the movie, based on what they're advertising, which is what the movies are, I think they'll do a lot better. I mean, I'm sure Peter would love it if there was a movie made on one of his books. He would see the sales on that book go through the roof because that movie would be a form of advertising. And all of a sudden he wouldn't say, no, we're not going to do those characters in that book anymore. We're going to change them to these other characters. We think you should be reading those instead. It'd be insanity. And that's how the comic book industry works.
Bring up the chair, Peter.
Yeah. We actually do have a film based on one of our books. It's my book, actually. It's The Chair. It's Roddy Piper's last feature film before he passed away. It's a death row horror thriller, so it's not exactly a superhero movie, and it's definitely an adult, mature movie. But we noticed an increase in book sales because of the film, and if anything, I noticed people will specifically try to search out for the book once they know the film is an adaptation of it. And I think because of the fact that the film and the book are relatively similar in feel and story, I think that the synergy has been there, and it's worked out for us. But obviously, nowhere near to the level of a Marvel film in terms of the type of money that's coming in. But I think when they look at that, I think they see a movie like Infinity War, and they go, "Well, that movie just made double what we made the whole year on comic books. Who really cares about promoting comic books?" And I think the more that talk comes in, the more that they start to allocate their money elsewhere. So I think it's something that everyone within the industry right now, especially indie creators, they have to realize that right now is the time to try to get your stuff promoted, to try to get your stuff out there and of high quality, and to get your book in the hands of readers, because the market is shifting. We're noticing that the biggest companies are starting to take their dollars for marketing and promotion and concentration on product and put it into other areas. It's a step backwards for them to do comic books, and this is how they're treating it, and this is how it's been going on for years now at this point. So yeah, it's nothing that should be of a surprise to anyone, but people just have to start realizing that it's not necessarily the death of the comic industry. It's evolving into a different thing. Marvel and DC are beginning to transcend the comic industry, and because of that, they're going to create a vacuum in the space that needs to be filled. And indie publishers need to step up and start doing that.
Yeah, a lot of the comics being produced today are just they're being produced so that they can show use of the character and retain the trademark, so that they can continue to use the character on more profitable things like lunchboxes and movies and T-shirts.
And if Marvel was doing Peter's book, they would all of a sudden change the character to be Little Orphan Annie.
Exactly. And the price point, you also brought that up, Peter, about, they go buy a $5.99 100-page book at Walmart, and then they go to Michael's store and pick up a Marvel book, and it's $5.99 for 21 pages or 20 pages, and they get disappointed with that. This is the price point is at a record high, and this is one of the things that that Umbrella guy brings up all the time. He's got a great show that I recommend people listen to, because he actually digs into the numbers on the industry, what things cost and what shipping numbers are. And he looks at stock reports of companies like IDW, for instance, to see how things are going. But, when you're competing for everybody else's dollar, don't you at some point end up competing against your own books if you're making your books so expensive that people can only buy 2 or 3 of them instead of the stack of 20 I used to get when I was a teenager or in college?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that's what's so perplexing right now, is if anything, the comics should be loss leader items to get more exposure and build up the value and the IP that is featured within those books. If I'm Marvel, if I'm running Marvel right now, I'd practically want these books to be as cheap as we could possibly get them out there. I would look at it and go, maybe these books should be $2 to $2.50. Support them with marketing, because you can't just have it. That's the thing too right now. I've seen people say, well, the comics need to be cheaper. And yes, they do need to be cheaper so people can afford more. But at the same time, if we're just going to be selling the same amount of books at a lower price, it's going to be devastating. So you need that marketing, you need that push. Marvel needs to, especially Marvel, because DC does a pretty balanced job of promoting their comics and their films and shows and merchandise on their social media. But Marvel is very much so concentrated on TV and film. It's very rare that you will see proper promotion of books on their Twitter page, which has upwards of, last time I checked, it was 7 million followers. So if they had proper promotion, even just on social media itself, and understanding, maybe do a training kind of video or something, so people within Marvel could understand these are effective ways of how you market the books. One of them, of course, is not to call fans any castigating, derogatory names. You're going to get that kind of stuff within the industry, and there's always the option to just not respond to people. You'd much rather just not respond to people than even call them, the worst thing that you can possibly say. So that's not helpful for marketing either. That's not going to do anything towards that. Now, I understand there's a lot of readers, obviously, they're not on Twitter, they're not on Facebook, all that other stuff. But there's people that are on those outlets that can see that marketing and go, hey, that seems like a pretty cool book. These people are marketing it well. And you don't think they're marketing it well because of the fact that it's creating a good vibe for the book. So people will want to seek out that book. They'll want to engage and check out and see what it's all about. And that's all you can hope for with marketing. You can't necessarily hope for a sale. You just want people to be aware of it and to try to want to seek it out. But you need that push. If we don't have that push and you just start lowering prices, you're just going to start getting lower dollar amounts for stores. Stores are going to get hurt by it. So it's up to the publishers, again, to try to market effectively. Stores can also market, obviously, their store as well and do things like events and advertise as well within marketing on social media, making a YouTube page, all that kind of stuff to get people interested and aware of their store. But again, these are all things that all of us can do. I think it's just something that we need to all take responsibility for, all the things that we can improve upon.
Okay. Pooling both of your guys' experience together here, is the industry in the decline that one camp says it's in, or is it doing perfectly well and growing like the other camp says it is?
It comes down to a real simple formula. Good story and good art sells. I mean, there's people who want it. There's people out there. It's like you were talking earlier about, the kids don't like comics, or the comic sales for kids aren't there. And what is it? Kids want comics. I have them come in every day, and I don't have enough product to sell them. I'm carrying everything they make, but it's not enough. It's like I've written some of my market reports because I'm an overstreet guide and like that. Is like I tried to explain to them what the formula is for kids' product, and I got this off of I'm sure you probably heard of a program called Doctor Who. Well, they did a special on BBC America about the making of the first year of Doctor Who, where the programming director explained to the producer what the formula was for kids' products. And the way he explained it was, you got to keep it complicated enough to keep the kids interested, but dumb it down enough where you don't confuse the adults. And here in America, we do the exact opposite. We give the complicated stuff to the adults, and we dumb down to kids. And we're giving them pablum. I mean, and the kids don't want that stuff. I mean, an adult wouldn't want to read that either. And then we go, oh, well, the kids don't like comics, so they didn't want to buy this book. Nobody wanted to read that book. They want to read the same things as us. When you and I were kids, the comics, they would have curse words in them, but it was pound sign, at sign, exclamation mark, and you filled in the blank. And nowadays they've got to drop the F-bomb in a book. All of a sudden now I'm limited who I can sell it to. The kids are coming in wanting to read the same thing as the adults are. They want to go over to the Marvel and DC section, which are all teens and older. And a lot of times parents will say it's okay. Sometimes parents are like, no. I mean, every parent, has a different set of criteria. But what is, they're really walling off the majority of their product from kids. I mean, and look at movies like, Finding Dory and things like that. I mean, look how huge a market those things were. And I still sell the comics whenever they make some, which is not very often. But the whole thing is, there is a market out there. That's where our future generation of readers are going to come from. So any problems that we're having is the fact that we have not developed future generations of readers in the past. And now those people, there are younger readers. Our stable market is graying because these are the guys. When I opened up my first year in business, I mean, it was like almost all kids. The way I started writing in the comic book industry, I sent in a thing about the top 10 funny things every retailer has heard. One of them was I'm the kid who was in your store last week. Remember me? I'm the one who bought the comic book. Well, they all did. And it was huge. Well, all those kids are still shopping with me today, 37 years later. And we're not doing enough to develop that next generation of readers. People love comics. My comic sales are, really just about as good as they've ever been. Problem is, I just don't have the right product. Like I said, people come in looking for stuff. Oh, Marvel doesn't want you to have that. They want you to read something else that they think you should be reading instead. You don't say that to a customer, and you give them what they want. And we're not doing a good job of that right now, which that falls back on Marvel DC. And that's why one thing I do in my stores that's very different from a lot of other stores around the country, who are probably the ones who are having the trouble, is I carry a big back issue selection. And so if that I don't have the new comics they want, they can find the classic ones, and I keep them stocked up. And that's why I weather the storms, or other stores are going out of business, and I sell through it with no problem at all, because I find another way to give my customers what they want. And that's what Marvel and DC are not doing, is giving them what they want.
Looking at the chats at the moment here, we've got Avid Comic Reader says, I buy a stack of alternate comics for the same cost as 3 to 4 mainstream comics. This is absolutely true for $1.50 versus $4.99, $5.99 for an X-Men title with the ink rubbing off on your hands. And Meowcat says, this old guy has a ton of personality and great mic skills. Does he have a YouTube page? So, Michael, you might want to consider getting yourself little.
Actually, I do have a YouTube page. I just don't do much with it. It's Michael E. Tierney, or you can find it if you go to my website, which is www.thewildstars, and you'll find everything on there from links to my stores, a link to my YouTube page, and a link to the city council that I'm on, and the new Tarzan, the Burroughs chronology. I mean, there's a lot of things on that website. So when you get there, you've actually gotten to the right place. You just got to scroll down, and there's shortcuts on the left-hand column of every page to shortcut, or you can hit the space bar at the top or the bottom of every page to get back to the main page.
Well, maybe we can bring people back all the time if we do something. Maybe we should set up something like a weekly, much more abbreviated version of this, because this has gone on way longer than I thought it was going to go on. But maybe like 10 to 15 minutes every week, talk about the comics for that week and what's going on in the industry. Maybe would people come back for that? Show of hands in the chat room. And we'll just wait for them to catch up to that because they're getting everything on the delay here. Peter, books for all ages. How's Alternative working with that?
We've got a ton of books for all ages, and they do really well. That's what's so disappointing whenever I have to hear something about how kids don't read comics, because kids love to read comics. It's just the comics that are out there for kids aren't necessarily the ones that they want to read. But at Alterna, we've got really, really great ones for kids, and they're very, very popular too. Some of the best stuff is when we get messages from parents who are reading these comics with their kids. And the kids will send us pictures that they've drawn of characters, and the kids will sometimes continue the story where it left off if it was just a short mini series or something like that. And the fact that the comics impact the kids so quickly, I think it says a lot. And I wish that there were more affordable comics for kids, especially because parents aren't really going to spend $4 or $5 for an all ages issue. Especially if a kid is not going to necessarily, I mean, they're kids, so they're not really going to take care of the book in some way. And then sometimes, especially right now, they may not enjoy the book. But if it's a book that's $1.50 and it's got a nice story to it, and it's bright and engaging, it doesn't talk down to them, I think the kids will really, really enjoy that. And with our books, they have. So it's
it's like today when you get. Okay, going back to the 70s and 80s when I was reading books, the comic books on the shelves, every book was an all ages book, which meant that a kid could enjoy it and an adult could enjoy it. And now all ages means Muppet Babies or Sesame Street or Rainbow Bright, which is definitely going to appeal to maybe just the youngest of them. So it's not all ages, it's young ages. And then the other books, they can't read it all, and the adults have to read it and then decide whether or not their kids can read it. But, as a younger than a teenager, I was reading, Warlord, Tales of the Unexpected, Ghosts. There was some scary stuff. There were some skimpy costumes. There was romance going on. There was violence going on. But kids could handle that, and you didn't have to say, "Oh, this is a book I can't sell to a kid." And nowadays, the language has gone up. The graphic depictions have gone up. You've got Wonder Twins coming out next month with this crazy. Orgy scene going on in the background, which is verbally described with words like throbbing with pleasure. And that was ostensibly being marketed as an all ages book in the Wonder Comics line from DC. So, it's a totally different universe that we've stepped into with this new generation. And I think that books like Alterna's horror anthology, it came out on a Wednesday, and ICYMI, they don't dumb it down. Definitely Midnight Mystery was, a scary as hell story. And I could give that to my kid. I did give it to my kid. He's 11 years old. I'm not worried about him reading that because I know he can process it. And he doesn't have to look at it and say, gosh, Dad, another Archie, And I have to get the old Archies for him because he can't read Riverdale because they've taken Archie and totally thrown out their old market. They're gone for a new market, and with the help of the television show, they're actually doing fairly successful. Michael, you can probably speak more to how the Riverdale and the Archie books are selling these days, but
less than they did when Dan Parent was doing them.
Okay,
he sold so much more for me, and I had a huge following. People bought them every month. Nowadays, they're crippled by inconsistent shipping. We're still waiting for that conclusion for Life of Archie. I mean, well, that start? I mean, how many years ago? And we're still waiting for issue 11. I mean, to conclude it. I mean, they've lost their core audience. And the whole thing too is, and it's like you were talking just now about how you know, the violence and this and that. All you got to do is handle it like Alfred Hitchcock would. Let the imagination fill in the blanks, and then put the pound sign over the curse words, and all of a sudden you can sell books to a child that you know, you couldn't if you wanted to show the guts spilling out or have to drop the F-bomb. I mean, you know, there are just so many books. I remember when Fables was running, there'd be so many issues I would look at and say, you know, there's just no reason why I couldn't sell it just to a kid. And then every now and then to come along a story where the content would be a little bit too strong. So it all depends on where you're going to go with the content. But I mean, there are ways to, you know, so Fables, yeah, I'm not suggesting that ever be for kids. But that one had a reason to be for older readers because it was part of the story. But if it's just for you know, just to be spilling guts or just to you just drop the F-bomb, I mean, it kind of amazed me when they first started making comics real mature, and I could never understand because they all would show people cursing. I mean, the mature comics came across more as immature than anything else. And it had everybody curse with the exact same diction. I mean, you know, you'd have a longshoreman cursing the same way as you'd have preacher cursing. I mean, everybody used the exact same kind of a curse sentence structure. And I didn't understand it until I went on the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund cruise back in !99 and realized that's how all the creators talk to each other. So they figure everybody talks like them. And so that would be a perfect example of a place where use the pound sign, exclamation mark, @ sign, because then we can fill in what kind of language we think those characters can use, because not everybody talks the same.
It's funny. That's exactly how my 11-year-old boy talks to me. He says, "Dad, you're being an $dollar." So he's been reading it like that. Gosh, guys, we've been here an hour and a half. Let's wrap this up. One last thing here. Everybody getting ready for Free Comic Book Day. I know that's in May, but you guys have to take care of all that stuff way more in advance than us people who want to go out there and get the stuff. What's going on, Peter, on your end with FCBD? Is Alterna participating in that?
No, we are not. We are not participating in Free Comic Book Day. No.
It's close enough to free anyway.
Yeah, pretty much.
And Michael, on your end?
Well, we'll be giving away a ton of free comics. We do limit to like 3 per person, but you know, we're giving away comics all day long. And so yeah, it's one of our busier days of the year. One of the things I had to stop being on the Free Comic Book Day website because it makes people think that the publishers give me the books free and I'm just passing them out. And so people would come in, they'd be very rude. That's not enough. Give me more. And there's nothing worse when you're paying to hand somebody a gift and that's not a good enough gift. I want more. And I actually had somebody once file a complaint with the police that I was not giving enough free comic books away on Free Comic Book Day. I mean, it was crazy. And, you know, I was talking to the detective and he's like, I know they're free because I read it on their website. And I was telling him, go to the frequently asked question page, like number 23 in a really fine print. It'll say that retailers pay a nominal fee. Well, you multiply that nominal fee by, you know, thousands and it's not so nominal by the time the day's done. So we do pay to, you know, so I'm trying to get that word out there. Like your retailer is actually paying to give you the gift. That publisher is not giving it to you. It is the retailer. So that's just kind of one little misnomer I'd like to kind of clear up for everybody out there who's convinced by the advertising where the publishers take all the credit. But yeah, we'll be participating. It'll be a big day.
All right. Fantastic. Guys, thank you so much for spending all this time with us. We've had some great information come out here. I'm hoping a lot of people share this out and get the replays. Would like to say, everybody, if you are going to order, if you don't have a local comic shop, go to alternacomics.com and be hitting them up to order your comics. I've been reading their stuff. They've got great stuff. If you are in the Central Arkansas area, go by the comic book store on JFK Boulevard in North Little Rock, Arkansas, and Collector's Edition in Little Rock, Arkansas. And of course, go hit thewildstars.com to see Michael's other books and publications. Everybody, thank you for coming. To our guests who are watching us on the live stream, thank you for popping in. Do share the link. And again, be looking for Gods and Services on Amazon. The link is in the description there. And also our TeePublic link is in there. Anything you can do helps us out. We are in a crunch and we've got to raise the money. We've got to raise it fast. So thank you everybody for coming. Peter, appreciate it. Michael, I think we're going to be doing some more of this regularly. It looks like you are a personality people want to see more of.
Well, it was a lot of fun. And they can find links to Gods and Services on my website too.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.